Joining me now, Daily Caller editor-in-chief and author of The Art of the Donald. Get yours in time for Valentine's Day. It is Chris Bedford. Welcome back, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
So let's talk a little bit about Nancy Pelosi. She is no Nancy at this point. It appears the shutdown is going to go on and on at least into next week. It looks like those House lawmakers will be released. So what does her new second tenure look like to you so far?
And who would have expected that Nancy Pelosi wasn't going to give President Trump one of his campaign promises if she had her druthers? She's been gunning for this for some time, and she ran and was elected based on the fact that she would resist the president and every single one of his measures. The only thing that the president really could do now is possibly come back with some measures that she wants, that Republicans would otherwise not give her. Maybe something to help with the dreamers, the people, the DACA recipients, and allow them to become U.S. citizens. Something like that that could make it more difficult to say no and easier for Nancy Pelosi to say yes. But he's in a really tough bind right now, and some sources I talked to, some staffers in the Senate and the House today, were saying that they don't even expect the shutdown to be over until after the State of the Union, and that the president and Nancy Pelosi, both sides, have no incentive to come to an agreement too soon.
I think you're absolutely right, and you don't really sense the urgency. You're not hearing anything about DACA and some sort of a trade for a wall or a fence or a border system for amnesty for a large group of people. But I want to talk a little bit about Nancy Pelosi because she really is in a very elite group of people who retook the speakership. And she obviously had some recipe for success. A lot of people discounted her. But what does she have that Hillary Clinton doesn't?
Well, she's tough, and she knows how to move the levers of power extremely well in the House of Representatives. Hillary Clinton was also a tough politician, but Nancy Pelosi has pulled together around her a lot of allies, people who really need her. Hillary Clinton was more prone to be able to do that before Barack Obama defeated her, and a whole new round of Democrats came in who were more loyal to Barack Obama than to Hillary Clinton. Nancy Pelosi has largely maintained that power over the years. She uses it cannily. She uses it at times fairly brutally. I think that there are some Republican speakers who wish that they were as shrewd as she's able to be.
Okay, but that's my question. What can Republicans learn from her and how she interfaces with her caucus?
This may be the first time that Republicans may be looking and saying, you see what we've been dealing with? Because in previous caucuses that Nancy Pelosi's been in charge of, Democrats have been very much united. This was before a huge leftward shift there, and it was before the Tea Party and the GOP. Republicans deal with a more difficult caucus. They've got the conservatives, they've got the moderates, they've got the guys who are up in New York who have to deal with the property taxes up there. Pelosi had her first real serious rebellion in this last run, where she has the hard left coming in, the Ocasio-Cortezes coming in, who aren't interested in seeing her to be speaker. So it remains seen to be what the modern GOP could learn from Pelosi, but one of them is certainly to be tough as nails and not give in to any kind of uprising from your party. Now, conservatives, however, would not like to see that from any Republican leadership.
Well, it's going to be interesting because you have two people, because Chuck Schumer, he's not as critical in the mix as Nancy Pelosi is, because she does have a majority and she's got more influence when it comes to this shutdown and setting a legislative agenda. That's something Chuck Schumer can't do. But she's dug in. The president is dug in. You think it's going to go past the State of the Union. What breaks the stalemate?
I think it would be surprising if it goes past the State of the Union, although that's what I've been hearing over and over again. And the reason I think it might be surprising is because President Trump wants to go out there and have a triumphant television moment. He's strongly incentivized to go at this. And people are wondering today if Nancy Pelosi would even invite the president to give a State of the Union, although I wouldn't advise she get into a television battle with Donald Trump, the television president. I think Republicans are probably going to have to put more on the table. But around D.C., the common wisdom amongst conservatives is they worry that President Trump will break on this, even though he hasn't seemed like he would so far, and make a deal with Democrats for either a vast amount of spending or for something that falls less than a wall.
Let's make a deal. Chris Bedford, thanks so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.